Hey, Christopher, the podcast Life as a. I want to start out with a question for you. Did you know that career-wise, 57% of Gen Zers would love to become a social influencer? Actually, 41% of adults would also jump at this chance. Well, what if you were one of those people, but you just realized that, you know what, this is just too daunting. I can't do it. It's impossible. However, you still love social media. Let me tell you, there's a whole other world of career possibility in that space. Enter social media manager. Are you curious or intrigued about what that kind of work would be like? Well, then keep watching. I've got this great guest lined up for you. His name is Gary Frater, and he was a social media manager for none other than Iron Mike Tyson. You know, that boxer, Jake Paul, that massive fight. Yeah, he was managing the account for Mike Tyson, like I said, and he's here to share some of his insights on what this career is all about. Now, I gotta say, if you do like these clips that I'm presenting here in this video, be sure to check out the full-length audio version. There we dive into so much more. And now, before we get rolling, I would love that like or subscribe. Hit that button right now. Please do me that favor, trying to grow this channel out. Okay, let's get into this first clip in which Gary's talking about what it was like managing the account for Iron Mike.
This other question I've been burning to ask. Part of your history and part of what's made you quite successful is Mike Tyson managing that
Yeah,
account for quite some time, and I'm sure listeners would love to hear a little bit about that. What was that experience like?
it was incredible. I mean, I got to be Mike Tyson's right hand man. I went from graduating high school with a 2.1 GPA to barely getting into college and figuring out all of that. And then I kind of came to this massive realization of like, this is what I want to do with my life. And then going from that moment to then a year and a half later with COVID hitting, to then a few months later being Mike Tyson's right hand man and being on the set of Hot Boxing with Kevin Hart and with YG and with all these boxers and celebrities and Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's massive in the fight space globally. He has more followers than the president of any country, really, on social platforms. So, like stuff like that is really, really cool. And getting to learn from Mike Tyson, being right there on the podcast. I also knew it was a career grab, right? A career. There's
Oh
jobs
yeah,
that are money grabs, and there's jobs that are career grabs, right? You might not get
yeah,
paid the most, but you are. But if you do this right, you'll go anywhere. You can go anywhere. And
right.
so that's kind of what happened with me. Is I said, you know what? I'm 24 years old, living in Los Angeles. I used to dream about being in LA, and I'm going to make the most out of this opportunity. And I did. And then I just went off and did it all
Yeah.
on my own.
And maybe you could get a look at what it's like managing accounts for some of these influencers, for some top executives. What goes into that? What does it look like?
Right. So basically, what we do very simply is we meet once a week with the CEO, the executive, that person that we're managing content for, and we do an interview style. It's kind of like we're having now. We do an interview style kind of questionnaire for an hour, and we do a deep dive into your industry. Let's say you're a tech CEO. We'll ask you about OpenAI potentially going public. We'll ask you about Elon Musk coming out with building a supercluster in 19 days. We'll do a deep dive into your industry, as well as what's going on, as well as what are some of the unique things that you have to offer. Right? What is your product? What is the company that you're a part of? What is that unique value proposition that you're bringing to the table? And so we'll take all of that, and it'll be filmed on Riverside. And
Mhm.
basically Riverside is a great platform for like podcasting, essentially virtually. And then we'll take those footages, or take that footage, we'll cut it into, let's say, 7 clips. And there you go. And then we'll put it on various platforms, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And since all of these platforms are pushing short form content, that's exactly like we're at the forefront of that. And so we have
Mhm.
a team of great video editors, designers that are basically ready to take that content and make it as engaging as possible. And then we strategically place it based on what news is coming out and when it's coming out, right? So, for example, something that a little bit more evergreen, maybe like a product push that you're pushing out, could come at the end of the week, maybe on a Friday. If something like Elon Musk said something and we want to get your reaction, we're going to post that on Monday, like as soon as possible.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, stuff that's exactly what we do. And that is the best way to get as much content as possible from the CEO, the executive that we're working with, in a minimal amount of time.
Okay. And I'd imagine that approach is similar when you're working with an influencer or public figure as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously athletes are a little bit different, right? Because you have to like maybe go to them and shoot content with them. It really just depends. But a lot of people are really into starting podcasts. And that is
Yeah,
the easiest way to get content from somebody. And that's also the best way to kind of get to know somebody as well, right? So
absolutely.
I think anybody watching this show right now is going to get a good understanding of both parties, myself and you. And I think
Yeah.
that is the best way to get content is to start a podcast.
Got one last question here in terms of, getting back to the nuts and bolts of the work that you're involved in here. I understand that part of your thing is building authenticity, with
Right.
your clients, whoever you're working with, and as well as like employing a bold strategy. Now, I'd like to learn a little bit more about like how you go about doing that. Like those two elements are foundationally are critical to any social media account management, I would assume, right? They're like principal sort of like bedrock items there. But how do you go about building those into, the strategies that you're employing with some of your clients?
One thing is just about building a relationship with the current client that you currently have to the point where they feel like they can trust you when you're on that call with them that I mentioned earlier, where
Yeah.
when you do once a week calls with them. Like you want them to not give you the answer that is the PR friendly answer, but the actual answer. Like, what do you really think about this situation? And I think kind of creating a good, I don't want to say safe space, but I want to say a good environment. I'll put it that way. A
Hmm.
good environment to the point where they feel comfortable enough to be honest with you, then that honesty and that energy translates to other people when you put that content out. So I think that that's something that is kind of, it's not really a strategy. It's just the way that I understand people. And that's the kind of the way that I would go about it is creating a good environment to the point where people can feel like they can be honest with you. And then that bleeds over into the content.
Okay. And that's also kind of where this boldness comes from as well. I guess once you know that person and you know what drives them, you know how to kind of like, I don't know, approach a topic that might
Yeah,
be
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
controversial at points. Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Okay.
what problems to, you know what to stay away from, what they do want to touch on, like what they're passionate about, like so there's that. I mean, once you kind of get to know somebody, you know that hey, let's just also double down into what they're passionate about, even even if it's not being talked about now, because you know that that passion could just very well, people resonate with passion and emotion more than they resonate with logic, right? So let's take what you're passionate about. Let me continue asking you questions and really hammering that down, and then put that out there as a piece of content.
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, be sure to check out the full-length audio version. There we dive into so much more in the way of Gary's backstory of how he made his way into social media management, more in the way of tips, insights, strategies, as well as his views on AI and how that's shifting and changing the whole social media landscape. Anyhow, again, you can find this wherever you access your podcast or even here right on YouTube, so check us out. And again, would love that like or subscribe. Anyhow, I will have another career covered for you right next week, so don't miss it. Okay, until then, we'll see ya.